1 Samuel.
Para comenzar vamos a leer una historia en 1 Samuel
24.
24.
And we're going to read the full story.
Vamos a leer toda la historia.
So we're going to start off with verse 24, verse 1.
Vamos a empezar 24, verso 1.
Now it happens when Saul had returned from following the Philistines that it was told to him, saying, "Take note, David is in the wilderness of Endigah." Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from all of Israel and went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats. So he came to a shepherd's fold by the road, where there was a cave. Then Saul went in to attend his needs. David and his men were hiding in the crevices of the cave. Then the men of David said to him, "This is the day of which the Lord said unto you, Behold, I will deliver your enemies into your hands, that you may do as to him as it seems good to you." And David arose and secretly cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened after that, David's heart troubled him, because he had cut Saul's robe.
24:1 dice: Cuando Saúl volvió de perseguir a los filisteos, le dieron aviso diciendo: "He aquí David está en el desierto en Gadi". Y tomando Saúl 3,000 hombres escogidos de todo Israel, fue en busca de David y de sus hombres por los cumbres de los peñascos de las cabras y monteses. Y cuando llegó a un redil de ovejas en el camino, donde había una cueva, entró Saúl en ella para cubrir sus pies. Y David y sus hombres estaban sentados en los rincones de la cueva. Entonces los hombres de David dijeron: "He aquí el día que te dijo Jehová, he aquí que entregó a tu enemigo en tu mano, y harás con él como te pareciere". Y se levantó David, calladamente cortó la orilla del manto de Saúl.
The reason why I want to stop at verse 5, because we are going to read the whole story, but
La razón que quiero parar en verso 5 es porque para no leer toda la historia,
I want to give you a background into the part on which where we are at.
te voy a dar un trasfondo en la parte donde estamos ahora.
So, in the part of the story, we are talking about Saul and David.
En la historia estamos hablando de Saúl y David.
And at this point, David has already been, with Saul for a while, fighting, for God's glory, fighting the Philistines.
Y para entonces ya Saúl, David había estado con Saúl y había peleado con los filisteos.
And at this point, what I really want to get into, because the topic on which we're going to be speaking of is, does your heart speak of love or jealousy?
Y a lo que quiero llegar es que tu corazón está lleno de amor o envidia.
And as we read the story, we're going to see two different sides of the way that our hearts can be shaped.
Y al leer la historia vamos a ver dos diferentes formas de cómo el enojo y la envidia, todo esto.
Now, up to this point, Saul has already, been with David for a while, and at this point, Saul is already hunting David to kill him.
Para entonces David ya ha estado un tiempo con Saúl, y ahora Saúl anda buscando para matarlo.
And the reason why Saul wants to kill David is because Saul feels that David is to be king because he was already anointed by Samuel.
Y la razón que Saúl quería matar a David es porque él sabía que David un día lo iba a reemplazar.
And to go back to how it all turns out is that Saul was the first hint of jealousy came upon with just one word.
Y para regresar a cómo todo esto comenzó, es que Saúl tenía celos contra David.
Now, earlier in the story, it talked about how Saul and his army had just won the campaign from the Philistines.
Más atrás de la historia dice que Saúl hablaba de cómo habían vencido a los filisteos.
And at this point, they were coming back, and they were coming back to Jerusalem, or Israel.
Estaban regresando a Jerusalén.
And the citizens of the city were coming back to praise and to meet the king and to congratulate them for a good war.
Y todos los ciudadanos estaban ahí para levantarlos en alto porque habían ganado la batalla.
And they were singing a song and praising the army.
Y cantaban un canto y exaltaban al ejército.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because the song is where Saul became jealous of David.
Y la razón que digo esto es porque ese canto fue el que causó que Saúl tuviera envidia con David.
And the whole song was that they were singing that was Saul had killed 1,000 men and David has killed 10,000 men.
Y el canto decía David
1,000 men and David had killed tens of thousands. Just that word alone, 10, was what sent Saul into jealousy into his heart.
y la razón que estaba envidioso es porque el canto decía que Saúl mató a sus 1,000, pero David mató a sus 10,000, y ese 10,000 fue lo que causó envidia, celos, en el corazón de Saúl.
So now that we know the background of how Saul became jealous of David, to get back to where we left off in the story.
Ahora que sabemos cómo fue que empezó todo, el celo o la envidia de Saúl.
And we know Saul, was obviously the father-in-law of David.
Y Saúl era el suegro de David.
And the fact that he was hunting David to try to kill him was just...
Y el hecho de que él estaba buscando a David para matarlo,
it's just crazy to think of.
estaba una locura.
I mean, what kind of wicked heart would have it that you would try to kill your own son-in-law just because they're praising him more than you?
¿Y qué suegro estaría dispuesto a matar a su yerno solamente porque la gente prefería a David?
Now, to keep on going along with the story is another thing that we could talk about is when David was told by his men.
Y después dice que a David le dijeron sus hombres.
At this moment in the story, David was told by his men that this is the day on which the Lord had said, "Behold, I will deliver your enemies into your hands, that you will do to him as it seems good to you."
Se está refiriendo cuando David le cortó un pedazo de su vestidura a Saúl, y dice que sus soldados le decían: ahora Dios lo entrega en tus manos.
Now, if you notice in this part of the story is David did not kill Saul, even though he had the opportunity to.
Y si notas, David no mató a Saúl, aunque tenía la oportunidad.
And the reason I would think it would be is because in Matthew 5:44,
La razón que pienso eso es que en Mateo 5:44
it says, it reads, "But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, and do good to them that hate you. Pray for them that which they despitefully use you, and they prosecute you."
It's 5:24. Mateo 5:44. tiene, maté mi Biblia. Ok. Para esto os digo, hablaba Jesús, amad a vuestros enemigos y bendecid a los que os maldicen, haced bien a los que os aborrecen y orad por los que os ultrajan y os persiguen, para que seáis hijos de vuestro Padre que está en los cielos, que hace salir el sol entre los malos y los buenos, que hace llover sobre justos e injustos.
Now the reason why I bring this up is because that verse came after the fact that David had already spared Saul.
La razón que traigo esto es que este verso salió después de que David le había perdonado la vida a Saúl.
Which gives you an idea on how much, that David was so connected to God that after his own heart, that he knew that he had to show love for Saul even before Jesus had came down to die for us.
Y eso te enseña cómo David amaba a Saúl a pesar de su adversidad.
And so I just wanted to let you know that in this situation, what would you do if someone was hunting down for you, trying to kill you? What would you do in that situation?
Y quisiera hacerte una pregunta. ¿Qué harías tú en esa situación si alguien estuviera buscando para quitarte la vida? ¿Qué harías?
Would some of us just leave him be, let him know that we cut off a piece of his clothing? Or would some of us would have just took the knife and killed him?
Algunos dirían, bueno, le cortaría solamente un pedazo de su túnica, o uno diría, mejor lo hago y lo termino, lo mato para que se le quite.
Now to continue on, at this point, we're already past where the men were telling David to kill Saul.
Y vemos que los soldados de David le decían que lo matara.
And we know that David didn't kill Saul.
Pero sabemos que David no mató a Saúl.
Now, why do you think that is?
¿Por qué fue esto?
Was it because, just maybe David felt bad for Saul?
¿Será quizás que David solamente sentía lástima o se sentía mal con Saúl?
Well, that's not necessarily the case in this point.
Pero ese no es el caso en esta escena.
Because it says that as soon as David had cut the corner of Saul's robe, that he felt conviction in his heart.
Dice que tan pronto cortó el pedazo de su túnica, dice que David sintió convicción en su corazón.
Now, how is it that you think David felt such a big conviction on such, if you were to think in the circumstances, it would be such a small offense?
¿Cómo es que David sentía esa convicción tan fuerte si era algo tan serio?
Saul had, tried to kill David, thrown spears at him, hunted him.
Saúl quería matar a David, le levantó una lanza y lo buscaba como un animal para matarlo.
Saul chased David away from his family, from his friends, the people that loved and cherished David. He took all that away from him and sent him into the hills running.
Saúl lo alejó de todos los seres queridos de David al desierto, a la montaña, esperando que no lo matara.
And for David to feel conviction just for cutting off a little piece of clothing, something that Saul wouldn't have even noticed if David didn't tell him.
Y David, sintiendo como una convicción de cortar ese pedazo de túnica, y Saúl ni tan siquiera tomó cuenta, nunca se había dado cuenta.
Now the reason why David felt conviction is because himself, he realized in that moment that he didn't just cut off the cloak or a corner of Saul's robe, but he actually raised his hand against God's anointed king.
La convicción de David en su corazón fue que no solamente cortó un pedazo de su túnica, sino que levantó su mano contra el ungido de Jehová.
It wasn't the fact that it was Saul that had hurt him, but it's the fact that it was God who placed Saul as king, and for David to act up against him, it was because of that his heart felt sorrow, because he had acted against God.
Y era solamente el hecho de que David había sido ungido y Saúl sabía y tenía celo para matarlo.
I mean, like I said earlier, a lot of us wouldn't feel that the same way.
Como dije antes, muchos de nosotros nos sentimos de la misma manera.
I mean, I've talked to people before, and some of them say that they find joy in seeing that the people that hurt them the most, seeing them suffer, seeing them, mess up in life, seeing them struggle, and that they find joy in that. Like they think that that's justice.
Han visto personas que se gozan, les da placer que alguien ha sido lastimado, que les hizo mal, que está pagando por los que me deben, en otras palabras, ¿no?
I mean, can our hearts be so wicked nowadays that just to see someone struggling, to see them suffer, gives us a false sense of like justice?
¿Será nuestro corazón tan vil porque nosotros nos plascamos en el malestar de alguien más?
Thinking that what they get is what they deserve.
Pensando que lo que hicieron, lo que les está pasando es lo que se merecían.
But doesn't that kind of go against with the whole reason why Jesus came for us today?
Pero no va eso con toda la razón que Jesús vino a morir con nosotros.
The reason why Jesus died on the cross is because we deserve the cross, but Jesus took our place for us.
La razón que David murió en la cruz, en Calvario, era porque nosotros merecíamos la cruz. Pero él pagó el precio.
So our hearts can be so wicked to find it in that situation that we still want to see people suffer for things that they have done to us.
Y nuestro corazón es tan vil que nosotros queremos ver a la gente sufrir por lo que nos han hecho a nosotros.
And we are so quick to judge others' wrongs rather than being able to judge our own wrongs.
Y somos tan prontos para juzgar a otros, el mal de otros, pero no vemos nuestro propio mal.
Now, my dad used to tell me this as a kid, that I should check myself before I wreck myself.
Dice que su papá le decía cuando estaba chico, dice que él debía chequearse antes de que se fuera a la deriva por ahí.
Now, this is usually when I was acting up, so I probably deserve to be
Es
told
cuando
that.
estaba un poquito rejego.
But a lot of that has to do with us today.
Pero mucho de eso tiene que ver con nosotros hoy.
I mean, how many times do we see someone that's maybe said something mean to us or said, that's done something to us?
¿Cuántas veces vemos a alguien que hace algo malo con nosotros, nos trata mal?
And maybe we see them, broken down on the side of the road with it being 115-degree weather, and we're sitting in our cars driving by with our AC on.
Y los vimos allá tirados ahí en el freeway con una llanta ponchada, y pasas como si nada, en aire acondicionado.
I mean, how many of us would actually go out and extend our hand to maybe offer that person a ride?
¿Cuántos de nosotros ofreceríamos un ride a esa persona después de que nos pagó mal?
Or how many of us would just keep on driving, turn the AC up?
¿Cuántos de nosotros seguimos arriba, le ponemos más frío el enfriador para que diga, qué gusto?
I mean, is it the pride in us? Is it that we think that they deserve it?
¿Es el orgullo o será que ellos se lo merecen?
I mean, at one point or another, we've all been hurt by a brother and sister in Christ, right?
En una parte de nuestra vida todos nosotros hemos sido lastimados de una forma o de otra.
And maybe at one point or another, we've hurt somebody in Christ ourselves.
O a lo mejor en un cierto etapa de nuestra vida hemos lastimado a uno de los nuestros.
If we were to receive the same kind of treatment that we dish out to others, how do you think that would go for us?
Si nosotros nos dieran lo mismo que nosotros damos a otros, ¿cómo sería eso para nosotros? ¿Cómo nos sentiríamos?
To go back to the story, imagine if we applied that to Saul.
Vamos a regresar a la historia, vamos a aplicar eso a Saúl.
What if Saul would have noticed that he was jealous of David, and instead of hiding it and instead of just being insecure about himself, what if he went out and talked to David about what he felt?
¿Qué tal si Saúl entendiera que él estaba mal y fuera y le dijera a David cómo se sentía?
I mean, he would have had to swallow his pride and had to really go out and talk to David about this.
Tenía que tragarse su orgullo y hablar con David.
So
de lo que sentía su corazón.
the story would have had a completely different outcome.
La historia sería totalmente diferente.
But because Saul allowed his heart to be consumed with jealousy and envy,
Porque Saúl dejó que su corazón estaba consumido por el celo y el enojo,
that it ended up in his own destruction.
y terminó en su propia destrucción.
And then that being said, maybe some of you out there tonight are thinking of an instance where maybe a brother or sister have hurt you.
Y quizás a ustedes, ahora vamos a lo presente, están dolidos por algo que alguien de la iglesia les hizo.
Or maybe in this instant you had hurt a brother or sister.
O a lo mejor lastimaste a un hermano o una hermana.
This is our wake-up call. This is where we are checking ourselves to make sure that we are following what God has chosen for us.
Ese es un despierta, una alerta para que nosotros podamos entender que necesitamos despertar de ese dormir y no caer en ese mismo mal.
Now at this point, Saul has felt threatened by David.
A este punto Saúl se cree que él está en peligro de David.
So maybe some of you have ever felt threatened or maybe felt, abandoned by a brother or sister.
Muchos de ustedes se han sentido que peligran o abandonados por un hermano o una hermana. Mi hermano podía ayudarme y no me ayudó. Mi hermano puede hacer esto y no lo hizo.
I mean, if we were to take, a vote and raise our hands and say, yes, this has happened,
Si pudiéramos levantar nuestra mano y decir, sí, a mí me ha pasado, díselo a todos.
then maybe most of us would probably be raising our hands right now. Amen.
Todos estaríamos levantando la mano.
Now, how many of us would go to that brother or that sister that hurt us and give them a big hug?
¿Cuántos irían a ese hermano o esa hermana y hablar con ellos del asunto?
How many of us would humble ourselves and say, I know what happened and I forgive you?
¿Cuántos de nosotros nos humillaremos a nosotros mismos y decir, sabes, yo sé lo que pasó y te perdono?
Is that not what Jesus calls us to do?
¿No es eso lo que Jesús llama a hacer?
Is that not what Jesus has planned for us, to go through these struggles but come out more stronger with God?
¿No es eso lo que Jesús nos enseña para que nosotros podamos llevar nuestros problemas y sobrellevarlos?
I mean, to talk about Saul and David, if you look at their stories, they both are in similar aspects.
Si ves la historia de David y Saúl, los dos están en el mismo aspecto.
To look at him, I mean, Saul was around 30 years old when he first became king, when God anointed him.
Saúl tenía como 30 años cuando él fue puesto en el reino y lo hizo rey. Dios lo vio como rey.
Now, although David was anointed by Samuel at a young age, he too did not get his kingship until he was around 30.
Aunque David fue ungido como rey, él también no fue rey hasta por allá a los 30 años más o menos.
And to look at it, it is when they fell away from God is when they both fail at the end.
Y si lo vemos en nuestra perspectiva, es cuando ellos se alejaron de Dios, que Dios dejó que esto aconteciera.
But the difference between them two
Pero la diferencia entre los dos
is that David, when given the opportunity to tell God that he had offended him, that he had acted up against him,
porque David tenía la oportunidad para decirle a Dios que Saúl lo había ofendido y voltearse en contra de Saúl.
he actually confessed to God and asked God to forgive him.
Él lo confesó a Dios y pidió a Dios que lo perdonara.
Where Saul didn't.
Mientras Saúl no lo hizo.
Instead, he kept his prideful, he wanted to keep his crown for as long as he could.
Por su orgullo, él quería mantener su corona lo más que se pudiera.
And even though he kept it for as long as he did, and he still, even after this point, he still went after David,
Y aunque guardó su corona, él todavía seguía persiguiendo a David.
it was by his own hand that he undid himself.
Y por su propia mano, él terminó a sí mismo.
Now, when they first started, when Saul was first anointed as king,
Cuando Saúl fue ungido como rey,
Saul I mean, he looked like a king. He was, big and strong.
Parecía rey, estaba robusto, así como yo más o menos.
I mean, he was holy.
Bien parecido.
I mean, he was a king. He was fit to look like a king.
Era un rey y tenía el semblante de un rey.
And when this little shepherd boy came into play,
Y cuando este pastor de ovejas vino a la escena,
and when it was known that he would be the next king, that is when Saul felt threatened.
y cuando se supo que David iba a ser el rey, fue cuando Saúl se sintió como que estaba peligrando su reino.
And instead of correcting his way of life, the way he was living, instead of asking God to forgive him,
Y en vez de corregir su vida y pedirle a Dios perdón,
it acted as if he were to just abandon God rather than try to go back to God and be on the right path with God.
y abandonó a Dios en vez de buscar a Dios y ponerse al tanto con Dios.
And so, to keep on going and finish the story that we're going to read,
Para seguir y terminar la historia que vamos a leer,
let's open our Bibles back up to 1 Samuel 24, verse 6.
vamos a abrir otra vez en 24 de 1 Samuel.
Yes.
Primera Samuel 24, 6. ¿Están todos ahí?
Amen? Amen. And he said to his men, that the Lord forbids that I should do anything to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch my hand against him and sing the anointing of the Lord. So David restrained his men with these words, and did not allow them to rise up against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. David also arose after him and went out of the cave and called out to Saul, saying, My Lord the king. And then Saul looked behind him, and David stood there with his face bowed down to the earth. And David said to Saul, Why do you listen to the words of men, who say, Indeed, David seeks you harm? To look at the day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you. But my eyes spared you, and I had said that I will not stretch my hand against the Lord anointed. Move over, my father. See the corner of your robe in my hand, for I had cut it off of your robe. I did not kill you, and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, that I have sinned against you, and yet you hunt for my life. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me unto you. But let my hand shall not be against you. As the Proverbs and the ancients say, the wicked precede the wicked, but the hand shall not be against you. After whom the king of Israel came out, to whom you pursue, a dead dog, a flea. Therefore let the Lord be judge, and judge between you and me. And see that this pledge my case, and deliver me from your hand. So that it is when David had finished speaking, that these words to Saul, and Saul said, This is your voice, my son David. Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Started on 6.
Y dijo a sus hombres, Jehová me guarde de hacer tal cosa contra mi Señor, el ungido de Jehová, que yo extienda mi mano contra él, porque él es el ungido de Jehová. Así reprimió David sus hombres con palabras, y no les permitió que se levantasen su mano contra Saúl. Y Saúl, saliendo de la cueva, siguió su camino. También David se levantó después, saliendo de la cueva, dio voces detrás de Saúl, diciendo, Mi Señor, el rey. Y cuando Saúl miró hacia atrás, David inclinó su rostro a tierra e hizo reverencia. Y dijo David a Saúl, ¿por qué oye las palabras de los que dicen, mira que David procura tu mal? Aquí han visto hoy tus ojos, como Jehová te ha puesto hoy en mis manos en la cueva, y me dijeron que te matase, pero te perdoné porque dije, no extenderé mi mano contra mi Señor, porque Él es el ungido de Jehová. Y mira, Padre mío, mira la orilla de tu manto, de mi mano, porque yo corté la orilla de tu manto y no te maté. Con eso pues, y ve que no hay mal ni traición en mis manos, ni he pecado contra ti, sin embargo, tú andas a casa de mi vida para quitármela. Juzgue Jehová entre tú y yo, y véndeme de ti, Jehová, pero mi mano no será contra ti. Como dice el proverbio de los antiguos de los impíos, se ladrá de la impiedad, así que mi mano no será contra ti. ¿Tras quién ha salido el rey de Israel? ¿A quién persigue? ¿A un perro o a una pulga? Jehová pues será juez y él juzgará entre tú y yo, y él vea, sustente mi causa y me defienda de tu mano.
To stop at this point of the story and just to look back on what happened here.
Vamos a regresar a la historia y ver qué es lo que pasó aquí.
This was Saul's wake-up call.
Eso fue una modo de alerta para Saúl.
At this point, David, he gave up everything. At this point, he gave up his life. He gave up his men's life that he was protecting.
A este punto David dio toda su vida, dio todo lo que sus hombres, todo lo rindió delante del rey.
David took a leap of faith in this moment.
Él dio un paso de fe en ese momento.
Saul could have cut him down right there and then.
Saúl podía haberlo matado ahí, entonces.
With David literally face down in the earth.
Cuando David estaba postrado, haciendo reverencia.
In one of the most vulnerable point of his life.
Una posición muy vulnerable en su vida.
He trusted in God that God was going to work a miracle there.
Él confió en Dios y Dios iba a hacer un milagro.
Even on the hardest of hearts.
Aún en el corazón más duro.
And at this point, we're catching up to the part to where Saul is about to realize what he has been doing.
Y a este punto vamos a ver cómo Saúl vio y despertó la realidad de lo que estaba haciendo.
How many of us right now would go to that person and then tell them like, hey, listen, this is your wake-up call. You've been falling behind, you've been trying to do all these hard things, and it's just hurting the people that you care about you.
Esta es una alerta para nosotros, para decir, hey, despierta, porque estás quedándote atrás. Necesitas recapacitar y ponerte bien con Dios.
So let's keep reading on to the next verse 17.
Verso 17.
Then he said to David, you are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, where I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day that you have dealt with me for when the Lord delivered me into your hands, that you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy and lets him get away safely, therefore may the Lord reward you with good. For what have you done on this day for me? And now I know indeed that you shall surely be the king, that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hands. Therefore swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut out my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home, and David and his men went up to the stronghold.
Saúl dijo, ¿no es esta la voz tuya, hijo mío David? Y alzó Saúl su voz y lloró. Y dijo a David, más justo eres tú que yo, que me has pagado con bien, habiéndote yo pagado con mal. Tú has mostrado hoy que has hecho conmigo bien, pues no me has dado muerte, habiéndome entregado Jehová en tu mano. Porque ¿quién hallará a su enemigo y lo dejará ir sano y salvo? Jehová te pague con bien por lo que en este día has hecho conmigo. Ahora, como yo entiendo que tú has de reinar y que el reino de Israel ha de ser en tu mano firme y estable, júrame pues ahora por Jehová que no destruirás mi descendencia después de mí, ni borrarás mi nombre de la casa de mi padre. Entonces David juró a Saúl y se fue Saúl a su casa y David a sus hombres subieron al lugar fuerte.
Amen. To think of this in the stories and the concept of which is the lesson that we should take from this.
Ver esta historia, el concepto de qué es lo que nosotros debemos aprender de esto.
Although Saul had, the look, the power, and the riches,
Aunque Saúl tenía el poder y las riquezas y el reino mismo,
and even though he was God's anointed king,
y aunque era el ungido de Jehová,
his heart was still able to fall into the temptations,
su corazón estaba dispuesto todavía a caer en tentación,
the temptations of jealousy, anger, envy, pride, greed, and insecurities.
la envidia, el enojo, el orgullo, todo eso.
And for David, even after he went through all these struggles with Saul,
Y David, aunque pasó todos estos problemas con Saúl,
he goes to show us that his heart, that he is truly the man after God's own heart.
y esto nos enseña que David tenía un corazón conforme al corazón de Dios.
He shows us that his love is full, that his heart is just full of joy, love, peace, faith, compassion, and conviction.
Nos enseña que David, el corazón de David estaba lleno de gozo, paz, todas las cosas que Dios tiene que dar.
I mean, if we were to look at ourselves right now and really look at our hearts, is everything that we're doing in our every single day, is it screaming love, light, joy, and compassion for one another?
Si pudiéramos ver nosotros nuestro corazón, está nuestro corazón lleno de gozo, lleno de paz, estamos dispuestos a hacer el bien para nuestro prójimo.
Or is our heart showing envy, joy, that anger towards one another? Maybe some of us get angry at, maybe our kids or our brothers or our sisters or our spouses.
No tiene tu corazón envidia, no tiene gozo, tiene todo lo contrario.
I mean, our friends, our families.
Nuestra familia, nuestros amigos.
Are we getting angry at them? Are we yelling at them? Are we
Nos
cursing
enojamos, o
them?
los gritamos, o los maldecimos,
Or are we showing them the love of Jesus
o
Christ?
estamos enseñándoles el amor de Jesús.
Are we showing them that even in the hard times, even at the worst vulnerable moment of our lives,
O les enseñamos que en los problemas más grandes de nuestra vida,
that we can still have faith that Jesus Christ is going to be there and that God is always in control.
que tenemos fe de que Jesús siempre va a estar ahí y que Él siempre está en control.
Amen. To keep it going is to really just to be consideration of others, to go in and actually be there for those who hurt us.
Para seguir, vamos a considerar a los demás y estar ahí para ellos.
And at this moment, I want to talk to you guys
Y en este momento quiero hablarles a ustedes
from a holiness heart.
de un corazón de un joven.
Right now, at this church, we don't see a whole lot of movement going.
En esta iglesia no vemos mucho movimiento.
And at this moment, this is my wake-up call to you guys.
Y en este momento es un despertar para ustedes.
I'm sure I'm not the only Hovian that feels this way,
Estoy seguro que no soy el único joven que se siente así.
but I'm here to call you guys out today.
Pero estoy aquí para llamarles a ustedes para el frente.
Right now, I'm cutting that little corner of your cloak so you know that we watch you guys, we see how you act with one another. We see that the struggles that go on within the church.
Ahorita corto un pedacito de tu manto y vemos los problemas que hay, los problemas que existen y todas las cosas pequeñas que están pasando en nuestros medios.
The youth talk to each other. We know the difference between the families. We know when the struggles, when someone feels hurt, we know.
Los jóvenes sabemos todos, sabemos cuando una familia tiene problemas, cuando ella confía en él y se cuentan todas las cosas, así que sabemos.
We see it every single time we come to church.
Cada que venimos a la iglesia lo podemos ver, es visible.
And our hearts cry out for it.
Y nuestro corazón.
I mean, we want to see you guys, up here preaching. We want to see you guys set the example on which we should follow.
Queremos verlos a ustedes predicando acá afuera, acá arriba. Queremos que ustedes sean un ejemplo a seguir.
We want to see you guys like when we first started. I mean, everybody was up and going and wanting to start their own ministries.
Cuando empezamos todos estaban todos bien energéticos y queriendo hacer esto y aquello por el Señor.
But after a while, we just see you guys start going cold, and it breaks our hearts to see it.
Por un tiempo después, todos nos fuimos enfriando y a mí me duele mi corazón ver esto.
And to see it happen over and over again, and for us to just try to, the holiness has always tried to be helpful for every group. It didn't matter who it was, if it was the Alabanza team, if it was the women's ministry. I mean, if you guys asked us to help, during Father's Day, during the activities, we were always there to help you guys.
Vemos que estas cosas pasan vez tras vez y los jóvenes estamos dispuestos a ver qué podemos hacer y qué podemos ayudarles.
But all we saw was fighting in between each other, brothers and sisters arguing on who was supposed to do what.
Hermanos y hermanas peleándose por esto, por aquello.
And for us, it's hard to see that, and then to go amongst ourselves and try to help as much as we can.
Y nosotros como jóvenes quisiéramos nosotros meternos y ayudar en lo que podamos.
It feels like we're failing to keep this
Parece
together.
que estamos fallando para guardar esto junto.
And I didn't ask to come up here and preach today. I was asked to
Yo no
preach.
pedí que me pusieran a predicar hoy.
But there's always a reason on why God implements the people that He needs to be there.
Pero Dios tiene todo bajo control y Él es el que pone para que yo esté parado aquí en este día.
I mean, I might not be the most chosen person or the most qualified person.
Quizás no seré el mejor escogido o el más calificado.
I mean, I don't speak Spanish, but here I am
No hablo
speaking
español, pero aquí estoy
in a
hablando
Spanish church.
en una iglesia hispana.
I am preaching the gospel to adults, people that should know more than me.
Estoy predicando el evangelio a adultos que deben de saber más que yo.
And I've done this more than once.
Y lo he hecho más de una vez.
And yet I haven't seen much other people in the groups, and I haven't seen anybody else really come up here and preach other than maybe my
Pero no
dad.
he visto a nadie más venir y decir yo también puedo predicar, yo también puedo compartir.
And if we want to start growing, if we want to start producing the fruit that God has for us, that promises us,
Si queremos crecer y producir el fruto que Dios tiene para nosotros,
you got to be willing to put in the work.
tenemos que estar dispuestos a trabajar.
And I don't say this to hurt your feelings, because that's not what it is.
No lo digo para lastimarte, no es así.
I'm saying this with love because I don't want us to just keep running into these caves, running for our lives.
Y no quiero que lo tomes a mal, lo que no quiero es que nosotros sigamos en la misma jaula sin salir de ninguna parte.
I want to face the problem. I'm here before you with my head down to the earth to
Estoy
ask
dispuesto a
you,
afrontar el problema y levantar tu cabeza para que digas, aquí estoy.
to show you that we care, that we want to see this church grow.
Yo quiero ver esta iglesia. Nosotros los jóvenes queremos ver esta iglesia crecer.
I don't want you guys to feel sad or sorrow or feel bad for us.
No quiero que te sientas triste ni enojado ni tengas lástima por nosotros.
I mean, we're kids. We're gonna grow old. We're gonna see the next generation. We are the next generation
Somos
for
jóvenes,
this church.
nosotros vamos a ver la siguiente generación. Somos la siguiente generación.
And if we continue to follow what God's plan is for us,
Y si seguimos siguiendo el plan de Dios para nosotros,
then we will see the fruit that we grow.
entonces veremos el fruto.
Right now I have friends that I'm trying to bring them to church, but the language barrier is really hard for them.
Ahorita tengo amigos que quiero traer a la iglesia, pero el idioma es el problema.
I mean, it's hard for me as it is,
Es difícil para mí,
but that doesn't mean that you can't keep trying.
pero no quiere decir que no pueda seguir tratando.
I mean, it's time for you guys to start inviting your friends, your families, your loved ones, people that you care about, because if you bring them to church, I mean, God's going to touch them. It's not by your hand, but it's by the Spirit, the Holy Spirit that comes over them and makes them realize how God works in their lives.
Es tiempo de que invites a tus parientes, a tus amigos y ver cómo Dios va a trabajar en sus vidas, cómo Dios va a hacer cambios, cómo Dios va a bendecir.
My dad's testimony is amazing. Most of you have heard it.
El testimonio de mi papá es impresionante. Muchos de ustedes lo han escuchado.
But my testimony is right there with him, side by side,
Mi testimonio está ahí también, a la par de él,
from a whole other perspective.
de otro perspectivo más.
I mean, I went through the same hoops that he did. I had to carry my father in.
Yo pasé sobre todos los problemas que él ha pasado. Yo lo tuve que cargar muchas veces.
I mean, I had to, I've seen my mother do CPR on him.
He visto a mi mamá darle primeros auxilios.
I've seen my father die multiple times,
He visto a mi papá morir.
not knowing
No
knowing if my dad was going to make it through the night.
sabiendo si él iba a estar vivo el siguiente día.
And the only thing that I had to keep me sane
Lo único que tenía yo para mantenerme sano
was Jesus Christ.
es Jesús.
And I knew if I prayed to him and I asked him,
Yo sabía que si oraba y le pedía,
and if I stayed faithful to him, I know that he would keep my father going.
y si me mantenía firme en él,
And I'm
él
grateful.
ayudaría. Yo estoy agradecido.
And I'm grateful that he's gotten this far.
Estoy agradecido porque él ha llegado hasta este día.
And I thank God every single day.
Y le doy gracias a Dios todos los días.
None of us are promised tomorrow.
Nadie nos promete el mañana.
At any moment we can go.
Cada momento podemos ir, cualquier instante.
So let's live our lives every single day as if it was our last.
Y vamos por nuestra vida como si fuera el último día de nuestra vida.
My generation of kids, have a saying that's called YOLO. You only live once.
Mi generación de jóvenes, ese es nuestro lema, solamente vives una vez.
But because I read the Bible, I know that's not true.
Pero porque yo sé, que yo leo la Biblia, yo sé que eso no es cierto.
We're going to live forever, whether we want to or not.
Vamos a vivir por siempre, queramos o no.
And we're either going to live with God, in the presence of God, in the kingdom that we should inherit,
Viviremos con Dios y todo lo que tiene, la herencia que tiene para nosotros,
or we're going to be condemned.
pues seremos condenados al lago de fuego.
So I just want to say thank you guys for having me here today.
Quiero darles gracias por tenerme hoy en esta noche aquí.
And I pray that my words did not hurt you, but that God can really talk to your hearts.
Y le pido a Dios que mis palabras no te hayan lastimado, pero que Dios te toque.
And I hope that I see all of you tomorrow representing your group that you're with. Maybe it might be the women's ministry. It might be the yes, thank you. Whether it be the Alabanza, I want to see you guys represent to show the holiness that what you guys are doing is making a difference.
Si vienes mañana y vienes aquí y representas a tu grupo, o ya sea a los jóvenes, a las damas, a Jehová Jireh, y le enseñas a los jóvenes que aquí estamos unidos.
We are the next generation, but we still need to be taught what it is to be a true Christian, a follower and imitator of Christ.
Somos la siguiente generación, pero necesitamos ser enseñados en cómo es la verdadera forma de nosotros como cristianos.
And the only way we're going to learn that is by you guys.
Y el único modo es viéndolo a ustedes.
You have to show us the way.
Tienen que enseñarnos el camino.
Show us that Jesus is the path that we need to follow.
Enseñarnos que Jesús es el camino.
So let's pray.
Vamos a orar.
Thank you, Heavenly Father,
Gracias, Señor.
for bringing us